Hey, good evening, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. Thanks for joining the live chat and also pledging to vote. Thanks to PAL for hosting these Outdoor State of Mind series. I'm really excited to be chatting with Jam Attari tonight, who's the CEO of Baywa Solar Projects. And we're going to be talking about stimulus packages from DC and impacts on the clean energy economy. So Jam and I actually met last fall in Moab for the POW Summit. And one of the highlights was going on, there was many highlights to the summit, but one of them was we went out mountain biking together. And so we're gonna get into your work in a little bit, but first I wanted you to talk about your personal sort of connection to the outdoor state and what that means to you.
Number one, Joe and Pal, thanks so much for having me, both personally and professionally. I mean, Pal's been a great association for us to really become a part of, and just really super psyched to be part of this conversation and all the other conversations we have going on with you folks. Listen, my connection is like a lot of folks. I just love the outdoors. I mean, from a very young age, was involved in sports that grew to windsurfing and snow sports. All forms of water are good with me, frozen or otherwise. And these days, you're just as likely to find me on top of a mountain. I'm built for going down, by the way, not going up. On top of a mountain coming down, or out on Kanaha, outside Maui on a windsurf board. And it's just kind of preserving access to be able to do those things is really kind of what drives us in our company in this market. And related back to that story, we were just joking that I went mountain biking because I wanted to avoid climbing with Conrad Anchor. I think I picked the right thing, but since that time, I've kind of peeked into some of your accomplishments, and dude, it's amazing. I watched a couple of your the Black Diamond vid, and then your middle of the road vid. It just crazy. Tell me about tracking 14ers in Colorado and what that's meant to you and how it got you here.
Yeah, thanks. Certainly one of the more kind of pivotal experiences that I've had athletically and also just on a personal and emotional level was linking all of the Colorado 14ers in the summer of 2016. And that kind of really just set in motion my thinking on wanting to be involved more at a local level, and also with POW at a broader kind of national level with climate. But on the first day of going out, setting out from my home in Gold Hill, Colorado, I biked to Mount Bierstadt, which is the first 14er nearby. And there's a big forest fire in Netherlands going on, which is about 10 miles from my home. And so, smoke in the air sucks for everybody, but when you're up at 14K, trying to get up and down these mountains, it's just a kind of particularly potent reminder of just how bad things can be. Another thing about the project was that I wanted to really start and finish in Gold Hill, and the reason for that was to see kind of the possibilities of basically the extended backyard and doing it under my own power, and just kind of seeing just kind of how far I can go, but also getting more intimate in a completely sort of immersive way in the Colorado landscape. And one of the things that becomes real clear is just also the impact of mining on the land, sort of as a visual impact of that. And so Gold Hill was one of the first gold mines in Colorado. And so, as a community, we get all the water from wells, and there's a coming together now around these issues of clean air, of water. There's some great, local organizations doing work like the 4 Mile Watershed here that are really addressing those issues. And it's great to see that, you know, it really does impact all of us, and there's a lot of momentum in the community. So it's the whole trip really informed both my sort of professional athletic career, but also just my life in general.
I mean, and just quick correction, the title of that little documentary you did is The Middle Way, and if you guys want to check that out, I dropped on Netflix. It's a really good watch. I mean, it seemed like it was just an amazing kind of life-changing experience, and the way you guys captured that was pretty beautiful.
Thanks. Yeah, it was all self-filmed, so pretty raw, kind of in the moment. You know, and that was part of it. I wanted to sort of remove the distractions of you know, having a camera crew or having, you know, people sort of coming in and helping along the way. And I really wanted to just be immersed as much as I could in the landscape. And that, yeah, it really did impact me a lot emotionally as well. And yeah, informs kind of the work that I do today. And so speaking of that, you're a renewable energy developer, is what you do. And could you tell the sort of the Powell community a little bit more kind of about that? And
yeah,
and what that
I'll go
means
a little
exactly.
bit into the history of the company. It was founded, you know, almost 100 years ago outside Germany, or inside Germany, in Munich, and really serving farmers, right? And so the bones of the company have always been about working with the land, helping build sustainable capabilities for farmers over the decades. Over the last 20 years, that's kind of translated into really building our capabilities in renewable energy, and that's wind and solar for us, and doing that globally. We started up here in the U.S. about 5 years ago, and really what a developer is, you kind of think about it like a real estate developer. We're trying to identify areas of the country that support the development of large utility scale plants, and that's different about us than solar modules that some folks might see on the roofs. We're looking for hundreds of acres to build plants on, and do it in a responsible way. Building it in markets that serve corporations who are now buyers of energy, and obviously utilities that are buyers of the energy. And so we do all the work in working with the local communities and landowners to site the land, do all the engineering required to think through, you know, how to build the project in an efficient way. We do all the financing of the actual construction of the project, then work to identify potential buyers in the later stages of what we do right now. We're owning projects, so and we do this all across the U.S. and in Mexico are the areas that I oversee. So it's a big challenge. I mean, these are can be 2-3 year efforts on working all the different pieces. Again, working with the landowners and local communities to help understand how projects impact the local communities, how we can support through our giving efforts the local communities. We've done things in the past like funded schools or programs at community colleges, brought workforce onto our job sites. We certainly do a fair amount of giving back related to our projects, but obviously the biggest part of our giving back is helping move off the grid fossil fuels and put on the grid clean renewable fuels.
Yeah, that's awesome. It sounds like you're approaching the issue from a lot of different angles too, and in a really sort of holistic way. And so, I mean, there's obvious benefits to reducing emissions. And how do you feel that this transition to clean energy is critical to addressing climate change?
I've answered that question a couple times, or in a couple different ways. I mean, first, and to me, almost formally, I grew up as the product of a PhD chemist, very science-based, and, grew up as an engineer. And it's like, you always look for the next best thing, right? You're always trying to advance. That's just the human spirit. How do you continue to advance to do things in better ways? And for sure, forget the politics of it. The better way to produce energy is with renewables. So, full stop. It's not because it's greener necessarily preserves the planet as the reason why I do it. We just do that as human beings. We want to go and build the next best thing. That's how we continue to advance as sort of humankind. But obviously the imperative of renewables right now is transitioning out of dinosaurs that we're pulling out of the ground, burning, polluting our air, taking away the future in many ways for our kids and for populations in some of these higher impacted zones along coastal areas, or up north in Canada or Alaska. What's happening is just devastating. And to the extent that we can be part of that solution, helping reduce greenhouse gas emissions through the some of the simple things we do, we're obviously all about it, and trying to find a way to harness the goodness of what we're doing, just the inherent goodness of moving to the next best technology, but also clearly the strong social benefit is something that's a challenge, right? It's simply a challenge. You've got another century-old industry in oil and gas that has super deep pockets and a lot of investment and sort of in the ground and in DC, and those are realities of the marketplace that we operate in.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and I feel like right now there's at least kind of we've ground to a halt, and we're maybe able to sort of take a little bit more of an assessment of sort of what's going on. And I know certainly for me, and just thinking of projects and things that I'm doing, thinking more local, trying to do things in a more sustainable way and in a better way. And I think it's awesome that it's paralleling with the type of thinking that you're doing at a much kind of broader scale. And so speaking of the current crisis that we're in right now, what kinds of impacts has that had on the clean energy economy?
Well, relative to the coronavirus impact, it's impacting our industry like most industries, right? And I'll caveat that here in a second. So broadly, the clean energy industry employs about 3.5 million people, and that work is done in a number of different ways. It could be folks that are in Fremont building Teslas. It could be the residential home installer in Golden, Colorado. It could be the folks that are looking to change, from incandescent to LED light bulbs, right? So that's 3.5 million people that work within the clean energy economy. There's about 250,000 of those folks work within solar, and the large majority of those are the local installers. So and these are folks that a lot of people know. Your neighbors, they get in their trucks and they go to work. They install panels on homes, and they've been affected just like everybody else. There was a report out today that there are roughly about 16,500 of those 250,000 jobs. Currently, the count through the end of March was 16,500. But we haven't seen the full impact spill through the sector yet. So we expect, I think, at the end of the day, to lose about 10% of that workforce from the current coronavirus, and obviously the activity within DC to preserve sort of paychecks certainly has direct impact with that kind of workforce. The good news is that from the utility scale market, the kind of work that we do, these large open area plants, the nature of what we're doing, we produce energy at the lowest cost in the market in virtually every market we serve. Those are markets that investors continue to support even through the crisis. So while I think we'll see installations for this year drop and drop, probably pretty significantly, about 30% is projected in terms of grid connected power from the sector will be lost or not be made within 2020. The but is it's really a shift. So we're forecasting, the industry's forecasting that shifting out into 2021, because again, the fundamental nature of renewables is so strong that we'll see those projects be maintained, just be delivered a little bit later, kind of past the crisis. And current conversations with investors in the space continue to be strongly supportive in the medium and long term. And as soon as we all can sort of navigate, kind of this situation right now, we feel, and I think broadly the market feels, that we're going to continue a strong push to really drive significant penetration of renewables.
Do you think on a personal level, people are also thinking along those lines? And because there's an obvious cost, a barrier, at least. Like I thought about, trying to do what I can, and even though things have, come down significantly in cost, it is right now it is challenging to be, even though I want to invest in, say having solar panels or something like that, it's a difficult time to do that. So I'm wondering if you've got some insights on that on the personal level.
Listen, this is a market where all answers are good answers. So the things that we do on big open spaces in the desert, or what gets done on rooftops is all goodness, right? The overall, if you count wind and solar for the U.S., it's about 6% of the energy production in the U.S., which obviously isn't a whole lot. So it's going to take a whole lot more of everything to really be significant. I will say that that last year of all the energy that came online, 70% was renewables, right? And there's a storyline here that we've been trying to capture in DC, which is we are the energy economy. We're not just renewable energy. We are energy, sort of full stop. And so as it sort of translates into the local activities, it's a challenge in the near and long term. I know there's one of our company's partners serves the Colorado market, where you are. You might know Namaste Solar. They're actually a pretty strong local installer, pretty heavily involved in the Colorado market, but it's a challenge, right? It's a challenge when you're trying to sell systems to individuals. It has for sure been impacted more significantly than utility scale solar, which are the large projects that we do.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. So, and then what are the policy solutions that can help with clean energy right now?
That's always a good question. And it kind of depends if I'm having a beer or whether I'm wearing a suit. So if I'm having a beer, the answer is, it's like we're a little tired of sort of being the industry that's got to solve global manufacturing issues that the U.S. has seen, right? If you take cell phones or TVs or computers, right? These are much larger sort of markets that have been impacted by global trade, or at least U.S. manufacturing has been impacted by global trade much more significantly, or at least a much bigger driver of the U.S. economy than renewables, generally speaking, and solar as well. So the tariffs were a big hit to us that were put in place a little over a year ago. It really took a big part of the engine away that we were moving on. I think they're looking at some estimates. The impact of tariffs on solar cost about $20 billion of new work that was lost. And just for us, we pay from tariffs about 12% of every dollar that we make in tariffs, right? It's a significant drag on what we do. Now, again, that being said, because the fundamentals of the market are so strong, we were able to, continue to make advancements in the overall cost to try to figure out a way to kind of accommodate the tariffs. But those costs are passed to folks like yourself. I mean, you're paying higher energy prices because of the tariffs, right? The whole nonsense that that China pays for tariffs is ridiculous. It's you and me that pay for tariffs. So that's wearing a suit. That's not a conversation right now in DC that plays very well, right? So tariffs are kind of here today. So back to the sort of policies that we think are important to focus on, and the audience should think about how to access your congressman. But there's really two things. The biggest driver of renewables right now is something that's called the investment tax credit. So basically, the U.S. Treasury and IRS have said that we're going to provide the benefit of an investor to take about 30% of cost against earnings that they have. It's a mechanism that's been used in a number of different industries and one that we use here. So it effectively, in a very simple way, it lowers the price of installed solar about 30%, right? And we won't go into too much of the technical details, but that's effectively what it does. That program sunsets right now in 3 years. It was a 5-year program that was enacted. We're in, I believe it's the middle of year 2 of that. So it sunsets in 3 years. Because of the COVID crisis, like I said, there's been some delay in projects. And so all we're asking Congress to do is just to, enact legislation that supports effectively that delay. Right, so we're essentially asking for both the extension of the ITC into what is, to basically a 6-year program instead of a 5-year program, and that, and because the way the ITC works is that 30% benefit gets captured by earnings that companies have, in this case banks, because the earnings of the banks in this environment are going to be challenged. We're saying, listen, can we have a cash conversion of that benefit so that we can collect from the Treasury that benefit? And then the Treasury has said that whether you do it via the old mechanism or the existing mechanism of ITC, or this proposed mechanism of this cash conversion, it's zero net cost to the taxpayer at the end of the day. So we've asked both Treasury and Congress to foster that cash conversion. That conversation is just starting, and honestly, part of the call to action here is to make sure that that folks can reach out to their local congressmen to drive support for these two mechanisms. If people want to go to SEIA's website or ACOR's website, I'm happy to provide a link to POW where people can understand what the issue is and use that call to action to ring up their congressman.
Yeah, we'll be putting up a slide at the end of this with a call to action that, and so you'll get all that information in a little bit as well. Well, yeah, thanks a lot for sharing all that. Super interesting and informative. I think we're going to take a few questions from the audience right now, if I'm not mistaken. And we have some that are up, and One was how many people are employed in the clean energy economy.
So again, if you count everything, including electric cars, LED lights, solar panel installation on rooftops, solar panel installation in big open fields, wind, that full count is about 3.5 million people across the economy. The large majority of that are in, I think, what the government classifies as energy efficiency, which includes cars and LED lights. The project-focused stuff, which includes wind and solar, is about 500,000 people altogether.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I another question for you is what makes a good site for solar, and what considerations go into that?
Excellent question, and it's something that that is kind of geographic specific. So there's a couple of things that you kind of take into consideration. First, it's the sort of the local energy policy. So in California, there was something called an RPS, Renewable Portfolio Standard, which said that California had to generate a certain amount of its energy from renewables over time. So we typically look for states that have state level policies that support the development of solar. The second big driver actually is where corporations are active. And so in the Northeast, it's the largest location for corporate energy consumption in the U.S. And corporations, which is something we didn't spend a whole lot of time on. Let me take a couple seconds here. So a lot of policy has been pushed down to states to administer relative to renewables. The federal government has really been nowhere over the last 4 or 5 years on helping support and drive the growth of renewables. So what you've seen happen, which is really kind of cool, is that corporations have kind of taken that over, right? Corporations have their own renewable standards. They're driving the market. So, a few years ago, it was kind of Google and Amazon that were kind of driving the adoption of renewables in their portfolio. And whether it's buying the energy themselves or telling their utility that services them that they need a renewable energy source, they've been really, really good about helping continue to drive this overall renewable economy. And so we look to places that make it convenient for them to buy the power, which is really probably the second big consideration. Then when you drop down below that, you say, okay, so I think I need to be in North Carolina, is actually one of those big states. Then you try to figure out how to assemble the amount of acres that you need in a robust way that's close to the grid, that you can tie it in, that is not in a sort of a high impact zone, whether it's farmland or close to communities. You want it rural to lessen the impacts. There's a number of considerations, but the local energy policy and what we would call the closest to the load or the corporate customers are two of the big considerations.
Awesome. Yeah, and I you're kind of addressed another question here of the barriers basically to more of this large scale solar, which sounds like it's just a lot of this identifying those sites and trying to have enough scalability on those sites.
Sorry, yes, right?
Just the barriers to deploying like more large scale solar, and it sounds like some of the availability of land and proximity to communities and just kind of the balance between those is a big
for sure.
The
permitting progress and everything that goes into getting the rights to build a plant is a big effort. I mean, you're impacting the community with large projects at the end of the day, whether they're renewable or not. They're large projects that are going into rural locations, and so we try to be sensitive to that, but for sure that's a big barrier. I would actually say that the the biggest barrier we have right now, actually, for larger growth is unfortunately back to tariffs. It's such a significant drag on what the opportunity is that I always come back to that. And again, unfortunately, not a whole lot to do about that. But trying to move a project along for 3 years and do that in a community that's not used to big sort of project for sure is work that we take seriously and take a lot of time to do it right.
Okay, awesome. The another question was on batteries, and I think that's one that comes up a lot with cars and such, and just the making batteries. And so, is your company specifically doing research on that? And how long do you think it will take to get the batteries to be better and and to be able to
so
sort
we're
of
pretty
expand
close.
solar?
So the cost of batteries and they're today they're really similar to batteries that go in a Tesla. They're small cells. Lithium ion are generally the chemistries that are used for the same kinds of grid connected storage opportunities. So we've been waiting for the cost curve to come down, and frankly, because Tesla and folks like Tesla are scaling up their use of lithium-ion batteries, that cost is coming down a whole lot faster than we would have predicted, and it's getting to the point where we're actually spending a lot of time. We just acquired our first big storage project in California, and looking to build a whole lot more across the U.S. And let me just quickly there's two big uses of storage that are two of the bigger uses. The first is, as California's taken on a whole lot of solar, it produces something that's called a duck curve. Basically, you have the energy follows the sun at the end of the day. So you've got a whole bunch of plants that are producing a whole bunch of solar during the day and none at night. So how do you fix that? Well, part of the way to fix that is to deploy storage and to use the solar plant to charge up the battery during the day, and then use the battery during the evening, nighttime hours to help smooth out that energy flow. So that's one big use, and for sure California is on the leading edge of that use. The other big use is what they call peaker sort of capabilities, to allow the grid to be managed in a way where you can bring on energy resources quickly. And so when you have like brownout situations, they have these peaker resources that have typically in the past been gas plants, that are now, there was a report that actually came out today that storage in the use of a peaker facility is now cheaper than a gas plant. So that's a really big promising turn of events to really drive deployment of storage in a number of different kinds of situations. But yeah, I mean, more to come, and you're going to see a massive growth of storage over the next 3 to 4 years.
Well, so you mentioned California being, one of the states that's at the peak there of that technology. But what other states do you find have the best environment for your work? And also, which ones have closed the door to utility scale installations? And kind of leading into that, but like how can we help change those policies?
We're not seeing any states specifically necessarily closing the doors. And again, part of the conversation. So I'll give you an example. Kentucky was kind of one of those states a couple of years ago, but there has been a pretty strong push by corporates within the state. People like Toyota, who said that they need renewables, and the utilities had to bring renewables to the state. You're seeing, to the extent that states are closed or were closed in the past, they're governed by corporations that want to, work in that state at some level to provide tax revenues, and they understand the importance of maintaining good relationships with these corporate end users. And again, like I was saying before, they've been driving the adoption of renewables, way faster than almost anybody else in the market, including the federal government. So, that's been a good outcome in terms of keeping broadly states open. So and relative to the other states that are open for business, again, finding states that are close to what we call the load or the consumption of energy. So the Northeast is a big area, right? You've got New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, DC, Virginia. Those are all big consumption states, and they have a lot of renewables that have come on the grid in the past and that are coming on the grid in the future. California has always led the market over time, and likely will continue to lead the market, particularly in storage coming online. Places like Texas have been quick to turn on. They might be just as quick to turn off because there's been so much activity down in Texas. But you'll see more and more renewable sources coming across the middle part of the U.S., and we expect that to, it's been sort of coastal, and we expect that to be sort of pulled into the interior of the U.S. Over the next a few years. We have big projects in Illinois, and Colorado, and Utah are all going to be deploying renewables.
Thanks, Jam. Yeah, that was really great and really informative. So just to wrap up, thanks for everybody for joining, and it really sounds like that the clean energy economy is something that we need to prioritize. Job growth, low cost, public health, and obviously climate benefits to all of that. So thanks for educating us on all of that. And PAL has created a really simple way for everyone to get involved, take action, write your lawmakers. I think we're going to see a slide right now, on tax free, and then the 65351 to take action. Thanks for tuning in. And one last thing, you can join us next Tuesday for the next episode of The Outdoor State of Mind, which will be featuring Michelle Parker, an awesome skier, and the VP of Sustainability of Aspen Ski & Co., Audrey Schendler. So thanks for tuning in and pledging to vote.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great evening.